We were just talking before we came on the air about what happened on Election Day. We haven't had you here back since then like this. Facing some headwinds, obviously, historical and inflation and everything else. You actually added to your majority in the Senate. How did you guys do it?
Well, I'd say two things happened. Number one, we passed some of the most sweeping legislation and important legislation to the American people in decades. People have said it's the biggest. We had the most successful session since the Great Society, and those who care about the climate a lot said maybe since even the New Deal. So we got a lot done. The American people saw that. At the same time, they saw these extreme Republicans sort of trying to overthrow our elections, gnawing away at the roots of democracy, and they didn't like it. So you put those two things together, and first, our base was quite good in turning out young people, people of color. But second, there were a good number of Republicans and conservative-leaning independents who said, I'm a Bush Republican, I'm a Reagan Republican, I am not this Republican, and voted for our candidates. And I hope that this election is a little bit of a signal to the Republican new majority in the Senate that if they follow the hard right, the MAGA right, it's sort of like following Thelma and Louise over the cliff. Well, maybe that's what the election showed.
Well, maybe it'll be a message in the Senate, but clearly has not been in the House of Representatives, given what we saw over the last week. Sitting over in the upper chamber, what were you all thinking as you watched this last week?
You know, what I was thinking is how can they let 20 people who are at the extreme right MAGA wing of they're to the right of the average Republican, let alone just steer the whole show. Now, of course, McCarthy wanted to be Speaker, but I think this is they're going to have a choice. Look, I congratulate Speaker McCarthy. I intend to sit down with him and with Leader McConnell because we want to get things done in a bipartisan way to help the American people. And my belief is that not in the next 2 weeks, but in the next little while, the mainstream Republicans who, if you watch their body language and even talk to some of them, didn't like what was happening, but went along just to give McCarthy the speakership, I think they're going to be a force that says, hey, wait a minute, we can't go this far right. Some of the things they proposed are to cut Social Security and Medicare, to slash military spending and hurt our troops, which is what their 10-year budget proposed. That's not going to fly with Republicans, let alone independents and Democrats. And I think they're going to come to their sense. I hope they're going to come to their senses.
We'll see, Joe.
Yeah, Mr. Majority Leader, let me ask you about one of the first things they passed yesterday, a bill that would slash enforcement by the IRS. By the way, if any of your constituents or their constituents have called the IRS in the last 5 years, they understand, it's already radically underfunded with the workers and with the old 1980s style computer systems. But this bill they had yesterday adds over $100 billion to the deficit. And I'm just curious, what do you say to Republicans and even Republicans you work with in the Senate who lie about the IRS, who say the IRS is going to Iowa with AR-15s kicking down doors to shoot middle-class workers?
It's absolutely absurd. What the Republicans are doing, plain and simple, is helping their friends, the multimillionaires, the wealthy corporations who pay no taxes, from being audited. This has been a campaign of the Republicans since 2010. When the Tea Party came in, they slashed the IRS back then. And then when Trump came in, he made it even worse. There are reports that, for instance, under the Trump IRS, Joe, that if you made $40,000, you were more likely to be audited than if you made $4 million. They said, oh, there's fraud in the EITC, the Earned Income Tax Credit. But they wanted to let their multi-billionaire friends, the wealthy corporations, get away with using all the lawyers and accountants that they use to exploit these loopholes and pay less taxes on a percentage basis than you and I do. The fact that they started off doing this shows they haven't learned their lessons. And the lesson is obvious, even as you remember, from 2017. Right. They came in saying, let's do tax cuts for the middle class. But their tax cuts were for the rich, the very rich. That was exposed, and they couldn't even use it against their initial planning in the 2018 elections because people knew what they were doing. To go defend these multi-billionaires and prevent them from being audited, and the auditing capabilities for these people went way down, is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And Democrats in the House yesterday, and we in the Senate, are going to keep exposing this. The first thing they do is help the very wealthy and the big corporations who pay little taxes continue to do that. We're not letting it happen.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you about corporations like the Archer Daniels Midland, Salesforce, Nike, Amazon, Occidental Petroleum, other multinational oil corporations that pay zero or have paid zero in taxes in recent years. And this is what I don't understand. Republicans act like it's a communist move if you want billionaires and the richest multinational corporations in the world to pay the same tax rates that you or I pay,
right,
that clerical workers pay, that their secretaries pay. Well, I don't understand what, and now I'm going to turn it on you. What's the disconnect? Why do Democrats keep losing working class voters when this is a party that is clearly determined to let the richest billionaires in the world pay zero in taxes?
Right. Well, this is an issue that we in our Democratic caucus feel strongly about. I came out very strongly with a statement, as did many others, about what they did on this thing. And that's going to be one of the issues we're going to be pursuing. It's harder in the Senate, you know, and with the 60 votes needed. But we actually decreased the deficit in the IRA. The Republicans hated the IRA, but that reduced the deficit by $300 billion. Here, their first move, as I think you or Willie mentioned, is going to increase the deficit by $100 billion because we'll collect even fewer taxes from these people. Right. But this is a great issue for Democrats. I mean, I think the polling data shows that prescription drugs, getting the cost of prescription drugs is top number one, and number two is making the wealthy and the big corporations pay their fair share. You're going to hear a lot about that from us in these 2 years.